Hello, family and friends. Good evening. It is the Wizard coming at you with his list of goals that I have set up for our upcoming adventure. Hopefully you're following along. If so, I thank you. Where to begin? Goals are like... The word goals for me is kind of difficult for me to attach myself to. This is just a quick synopsis before I delve in. This may be a little bit a longer video, and I could care less if you really watch the whole thing. This is more or less for documentary purposes or basic overall recording to keep track of, I guess. But essentially I wanted to document what it is that I'm focused on. And like I said, I'm not too attached to the word goals themselves. This being the beginning of the year, it's not that hard to jump on the bandwagon of writing your New Year's resolutions and your goals for the year. And as I have done so, I don't want to say the difference because I don't want to sound like I'm comparing myself, but the way I structured this was the simple fact that I really have had these built up in my mind for a while. Like, I've known that I was going to England for a while now. I just didn't know when. And now that it's come to the appropriate time, I don't know why, but I finally decided to actually write them all down. I just did this a few hours ago. It took me no more than a couple hours to write them down itself, but know that I've had them in the back of my mind for quite a while. So I know what it is that I want to go for. And I finally wrote it down because I knew how to make a video, and here we are. So to start things off, I'm going to start real simple. And this is in accordance with when I get back from England. By the time I'm done with the overall training experience that I have, I want to have a specific level of skill to come back with, right? I want to become someone by the time the internship is over, right? So a simple skill or a simple goal that I would like to achieve is reading a book a day, right? So one of my goals is not a book a day. Good God, am I crazy? Read a book a month. Yeah, reading a book a day is a little bit past the standard that I plan on achieving, but a book a month. It is not my strong point. I have to admit, book reading is not necessarily my main area of ways of learning, ways of educating yourself. I more or less do a lot of listening. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I listen to a lot of podcasts and interviews on whoever I would deem successful, in my own eyes. But essentially, book reading is something that I want to really delve into. I have a lot of specific books. I wish I was upstairs because I just packed away a few books that I wanted to send to myself overseas when I'm in England. But essentially, I want to book a month by the time I get back. So that's a simple goal, and then what will it take? I had a little interesting idea of what it would take to get there, and I was thinking what did I call it? I wrote it down actually. The Ultra Wiz Top 25 Books for England. All right, and I was actually going to have like a freaking request for you guys to write down what it is, maybe top books that you guys have always been interested in. More or less stemmed around the idea of health and mind-body overall connection. This is really broad, of course, but that's obviously the point. But essentially, top 25. I wanted 25 books by the time I came back. I know that's a few to some. To me, that's an amazing start, and that's where it's going to stay. So pretty simple. A book a month by the time I get back. And I have like 8 or 9 or so. Before I got started, I want to say a couple things, like 8 or 9 goals. I don't have 1,000 goals. and this is where it kind of separates itself. Like the way I write down my goals, you may find this to be either something that you do too, or something that's not the way you do it. And I'm trying to compare this to when I, as a coach, as a trainer, not that I want to label myself, but when people ask me about health and fitness training tips, anything in that regard, there's a certain number of questions or certain type of questions that are usually asked, and when I get to the goal portion of like what you want to do with your life and how you perceive yourself, to me the usual response is very basic. It's very not very broad. It's just not that big, and honestly, I don't even think my goals are big enough. But when I hear like, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds this season, or I want to, become this strong, or I want to lift this much, that just seems very broad or very generic, very low, basic. It's just not big enough. And that, reaching a certain number or a certain body type is just an increment to me to get you to where you really want to be. So to kind of like, I don't want to say a better version because I don't like comparing, but to give you my version of goal setting, to go on, I have like 8 or 9, and this is literally for the next 2.5 years. Not to put any numbers on it. I really don't like numbers at all, like time frames or how much weight I'm going to lose or anything or gain. But this was in accordance with how I structured the next decade of my life or so, and for some reason I just put my England adventure to be a quarter of that decade. So a couple years worth of training. Not that it has any precedence of how long it's going to be. It just is what it is. So about 2.5 years out is when I'm setting these goals, right? When I come back in about 2.5 years. Very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not set in stone. That's really just a number. But either way, these goals are all attainable. I'm usually one to set my goals too low, then to set them too high. At least in accordance with time. So everything that I have written down here can most certainly be done and will be. So moving on, have a structured daily morning and evening routine established. So this is just a personal health accomplishment that I want to make sure that I come back home with. And that's having a structured morning and evening routine. This is time to myself. This is personal growth. I have the daily routine written down, which will become another video before I take leave here, and let you guys know of. But essentially, that morning and evening routine is time to myself. It's meditation. It's book reading. What I seek to develop is the consistency. I seek to develop the dedication, the commitment, the discipline, to actually come back home with, and no matter how drastic the change is, I'll still be able to manage that morning and evening routine, right? Because it is that important, and we should all take time to ourselves to prepare for the day and end the day, right? Number 3 has to deal with the website that I have in formation, and that is create a community / website create a community filled with leaders who are passionate about connecting with others and growing and experiencing life together. Yeah, I know, pretty broad. Expressing ideas and sharing interests, create an allegiance filled with those who are ready to take over the world. Pretty simple. No different than what anyone who has just started off and wants to use the internet as a sharing device, as a connecting device. I personally am just getting started in this department. I'll just put it out there, I have no knowledge in the internet marketing, in the digital marketing area. It is one area that I have to make sure that I practice in, essentially fail, but essentially I have to get something down. I know what it is that I want. I have no doubt that I'm going to get it. But essentially essentially. I love my choice of words that I'll always say over and over again on camera. But yeah. Essentially a website of growth. Pretty simple, more or less around the idea of health. And the mind-body connection, but it could just go off from there, a website of connection. It's exactly what it's supposed to be used for. Moving on, become financially independent enough to put down a down payment and have the first year's rents taken care of for the house/gym location that I plan to have when I come back home. So it's pretty simple. I didn't want to go too much into the life that I wish to have upon returning. I wanted to save that a little bit later until I actually got to England, at least for those videos. But obviously this will conflict. So when I come back home, it is essentially time to grow out my own business, become my own personal coach, online business marketer, entrepreneur, or what have you. Right? And I want to be financially independent with it. I want to be able to start it. I want to be able to get right into it. If anything, I want to be prepared to go back home, know exactly where I'm going to go as far as the location of the business, and jump right on it, right? Have plenty saved up for rent in the time, and continue to work at it, Pretty simple, but not easy to attain. Upon after that, I have... Ooh, I like this one. Another goal is to be instinctively independent. All right, now, explain that here, only because I think I made it up myself. But essentially... whether I'm financially stable or not. So essentially, once I've created the business, once I've gotten it started, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that I'm going to run out of money, just like every successful person ends up doing. Once that happens, I want to be able to have the virtues required to be stable at an instinctual level. So when I say instincts, I think like survival instincts. And survival instincts are simply there to save you from the natural breakdowns of life. So we consider, what you need to survive, drink water, eat food, food, water, shelter, clothing. Isn't there another one? Food, water, shelter, clothing. Pretty simple. I personally don't believe you need cash, but you need a form of currency, and that can be the knowledge that you have or the passion that you have to offer to the rest of the world. Whatever that is that you have to offer to the rest of the world, because we all have that in us, is what you would contribute, whether you have stable finances or not. So that ability to stay grounded, whether I am financially stable or not, is a very big component, and I plan to stretch those virtues of being grounded by the time I get back. Not needing to go live with my parents or I don't need to rely on anyone. I can do this on my own, It's pretty simple. It's independence. But the realization that it only works when you work with everyone else. That's the catch. So, moving on. Where am I at? Ooh, I like this one too. So, develop the skills and virtues of both confidence and courage, among others, to approach at least 50 people a day. I know that's like a weird number, but I'll explain in a moment. This ties into a skill of approaching people. And what I mean by that is, some of you may know, or we should all know, that there is a skill required when connecting with individuals. There's much to this, but it is a skill. You're not just born introverted or extroverted, and if you're introverted, you can't, you don't connect well with others, you don't express well. It's complete hogwash. It's all learnable. It's all attainable. You can connect with anyone you want and express however you want, in whatever way you want. And so what I want to do is be able to approach people and literally open up and connect through that health passion that I have, if you understand what I'm saying. So not necessarily approach people and just connect with people, which is a skill in of itself, but offer my services essentially. As I'll be building a business, I'll have services to offer, and approaching people and just saying, hey, what's life like for you and how can I help, is a skill to practice. So, 50 people may sound low to some, but that also doesn't include, for me, it doesn't really include like online or digital marketing, anything like that. I want to actually be able to go out there, randomly walk around town, and start up a conversation. Excuse me. That's simple. So yeah, little out there, but most certainly well worth it in the end and in the beginning, because it's definitely a virtue that you would use for the rest of your life. Number 7, create a written document version, whether online or paper, of the complete overall structural foundation of the business model